If there's one thing I know from growing up in the projects, struggling through blackout drunk benders during my alcoholic days, being a professional boxer, going back to school for physics, and now having a toddler in my home, it's that life isn't easy. Most of the time, it's not even fun, but those moments of triumph over difficulty bring us joy. And we chase that joy like a fiend chases a fix because it brings meaning to our lives. So imagine for a moment a world without hardship, and it was just all fun and games. It's crazy how many people think life is supposed to be this way, all sunshine, rainbows, and whatever other happy-ish you can think of. I'm convinced that these folks don't live in reality. At the very least, they are unable to cope with reality, so they shun or avoid anything that even looks remotely difficult. They don't realize that the best and worst parts of life walk side by side, and you can't avoid the bad things without forfeiting your opportunity to enjoy the good ones. A few days ago, this tweet came across my timeline. Not to be a hedonist, but pleasure is the whole point. We are made for pleasure. Humans have not survived out of spite or sheer grit. We live for pleasure. We're made to fill our bellies with food, to nap in soft grass, to touch each other in joy and comfort. When I saw this, I immediately responded, this is why 43% of Americans are obese and all the top causes of death are metabolic syndrome. And most can't even cover a $1,000 emergency. And the stats on antidepressant use don't even get me started. This response riled up some people, but here's the hill I will die on. Humans are anti-fragile creatures. Now, anti-fragile was a term coined by Nicholas Taleb to describe systems that improve after disruption. The basic idea is that there are three levels of a stress response. Fragile, the system breaks under stress. A glass is fragile because it breaks easily when you drop it. Robust, the system resists stress. A plastic cup is robust because while it's possible to break it, it will take a lot more than hitting it on the ground. And anti-fragile, the system comes back strong after being stressed. Come back stronger. Bones come back stronger after being exposed to a stress. Yes, it's possible to break a bone. Bones break all the time. However, an appropriate amount of force applied to a bone beneath its breakpoint will cause the bones to adapt and better resist stress in the future. The same idea works for our muscles and immune system. We lift weights to get stronger, but not so heavy that we can't move them. After we get sick, we develop resistance, and in many cases, outright immunity against the strand of pathogen that infected us, but only if it's not too devastating. And note, I know this isn't a gross oversimplification of immunity, but it's correct enough to make decisions that will mitigate negative outcomes. Anyone watching this over 35 remembers chickenpox parties. Our physiology is anti-fragile, and we start there because it's the easiest place to see how this concept applies to the real world. I love Taleb as much as any other pseudo-intellectual, but this idea would only be an academic theory and exercise in mental masturbation if there weren't real-world examples and applications. The anti-fragile model also predicts what happens if an anti-fragile system is not exposed to stress. When astronauts spend extended time in space, their bones weaken and must be slowly reacclimated to Earth's gravity. In hospital patients who have been bedridden for long periods of time, muscles must be built back up before they can walk again. One of my favorite books, The Epidemic of Absence, demonstrates that food allergies and asthma increase as a country's GDP rises and becomes cleaner. Without parasites and pathogens to ward off, the immune system becomes less able to deal with incoming threats and overreacts to what is otherwise something healthy. Psychologically, humans are no different. In Coddling of the American Mind, Dr. John Haidt makes the argument that the mental health crisis wreaking havoc on younger millennials, those born between 1989 and 1996, and Gen Z, anyone born in 97 or after, is driven by them not being exposed to emotional hardship, pain, and risk while growing up. This crisis is due to what he calls the three great untruths. You must strive to avoid bad experiences at all costs. You must always trust your emotions over reason. And the world is black and white with no in between, and there are only good people and bad people. If you strive to avoid bad experiences, you won't be able to handle bad experiences in the future. Life is hard and full of unpleasantries. The idea that it should be easy or fun is a relatively new notion for humanity. Considering the following timeline. And in considering this timeline, let's focus on mainstream archaeology. I think Graham Hancock makes some compelling arguments, but they aren't necessary for the point I'm making. So, in this timeline, Homo sapiens, the species of human that you and I belong to, evolved roughly 300,000 years ago. The last ice age ended about 12,000 years ago. Farming began shortly after, estimated between 9,000 and 10,000 years ago. We aren't done yet, but I need to point something out. Before farming, humans ate by hunting, fishing, and foraging. They weren't going to the refrigerator to grab a pack of steaks to thaw. Whenever they wanted to eat, they had to hunt and kill it. Anyone who's hunted or fished knows how long it can take. And that's what modern firepower and technology. For 97% of the 300,000 years of our existence, our days consisted mainly of tracking, catching, killing, and preparing our sustenance. I'm sure there was something to do for fun, but it was likely reserved for children. Let's continue. Navigation by sea didn't start until about 4,000 years ago. The first road seemed to have been built around 4,500 years ago. Evidence of wheeled vehicles, carts, and wagons doesn't emerge until 3,500 years ago. If you wanted to go anywhere, you were walking. A pleasant walk in the park or a stroll after dinner is relaxing and fun, but most of us wouldn't consider walking double or triple digit miles fun. People have this diluted idea that life should be fun and easy, or at the very least, it shouldn't be hard. But life has always been hard, and that's only changed recently. Consider some things that we take for granted. The first automobile using gas wasn't invented until 1885. It's a common myth that Ford invented it later, but he merely created the assembly line. The first home refrigerators weren't sold until 1913. The first commercial flight didn't take off until 1914. The television was invented in 1927, and penicillin wasn't discovered until 1928 and didn't become widely available for another decade. The microwave was invented in 1945. These inventions were all made a few decades before the computer, high-speed wireless internet, and cellular phones were invented. These inventions make life incredibly easy and fun, but we've only had this level of ease and comfort for less than 1% of our existence. Even the ability to cool your home with air conditioning didn't exist until 1902. Most of our time on this planet has been in misery. It was cold, challenging, and full of death. To put this reality into perspective, just 200 years ago, the child mortality rate in the United States was 46%. That's almost a coin flip. These were not happy times, but this was the state of things. We've eradicated so many hardships in this world that this number stands at less than 1%, and has been for almost 100 years. Life is hard, and modern technology has made many people believe it shouldn't be. This line of reasoning is problematic. Now, I'm not arguing that society should return to a time when survival was a full-time job and half your children perished. I'm only reminding you that humans evolved to deal with harsh circumstances. Now that we've removed many of those harsh circumstances, we've become weak and entitled. And perhaps worst of all, we've invented problems where there are none. If you're new here and you made it this far, you know what I'm talking about. There's a great line from The Matrix. He goes, "Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world, where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? It was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost." Some believe we lack the programming language to describe your perfect world, but I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through suffering and misery. The perfect world was a dream that your primitive cerebellum kept trying to wake up from. That's Agent Smith. The epidemic of absence also makes an interesting point about our immune system in this regard. The author proposes that our immune system evolved in a much dirtier world. Most of human existence lacked antibiotics, vaccines, refrigeration, pasteurization, antiseptics, or even the knowledge of germs. Yet we managed to survive and replicate, or at least 46% of us anyway. Now that the world is incredibly clean and sanitized, the immune system has nothing to do. So instead of chilling out, it starts to attack all sorts of innocuous or helpful things. Food allergies and autoimmune conditions make the list. And surely to support his argument, the author shows that as a country's GDP increases, so does its incidence of allergy and autoimmunity issues. Just as our immune system rejects this perfect world, so does our psyche. Objectively speaking, in any metric of quality of life, material living conditions, leisure and social interactions, economic security and safety, governance and basic rights, natural living environment, this is the best time of history to be alive, and it's not even debatable for most of the world, especially anyone capable of watching this. Now, we manufacture crises because we need something to fight against. We come back to the problem of avoiding bad experiences. Our psyche doesn't do any better in utopia than our bodies do without exercise. Developing a thick skin is a metaphorical way of describing becoming more resilient, mentally tough, and less sensitive to criticism, rejection, or adversity. It's about maintaining composure, self-confidence, and emotional stability in facing challenges or negative feedback. Thick skin is necessary if you want to survive in this world. Even in this modern landscape, with all of our conveniences, humans are still human. People will hurt you, embarrass you, and sometimes simply ignore you. You can't legislate away the darkness of human behavior. You can't build safe spaces to protect yourself from microaggressions. How you feel about the world does not change the fundamentals of human nature. You either learn to deal with life, or life deals with you. Now, at this point, I have to make something clear. I'm not advocating for abuse, mistreatment, bullying, or any mistreatment toward one another. I'm a peace and love type guy, but I can be a peace and love type guy because I don't expect anyone to be a peaceful, loving type person. When Roosevelt said to walk softly and carry a big stick, he was talking about international diplomacy. But the point also holds on a local, personal level. In other words, you need to be capable. Being capable means standing up for yourself and learning to control your emotions. To do this, you need to do hard things. The beauty of doing hard things is that they typically kick your ass and drag your ego through the mud. But in suffering a setback, you become more rigid and more resilient. The moment you make your priority finding the easiest, most pleasurable way to make it through any situation, you've lost the battle twice. The first loss is immediate when you forfeit an opportunity to get strong. This loss feels like a victory because you won't suffer, at least not immediately. The second loss you'll suffer is the next time you face a similar, if not identical, situation. You'll be weaker and on your back foot, meaning that even if the problem has stayed at the same level, it's effectively gotten stronger because you have now lost the initiative and you've conditioned yourself to avoid it. An easy way to make sure that you train yourself to face these difficulties is to watch this video here, where I talk about how to build resilience and self-discipline. Until next time, the rest is up to you.